Geelong Footy Club did the job on Friday night against the Brisbane Lions, has to be said, who were pretty disappointed. Maybe, as their coach said, they'd come to the end of their tether after two big come-from-behind victories the earlier 2 weeks. So that was pretty comfortable for the Geelong Footy Club, 71 points. A 154-point turnaround, if you don't mind, from preliminary final in 2021 to 2022. So they've had a magnificent year. And then the 1-point thriller at the SCG, which our men here who were at the ground said the actual stadiums were rocking, were moving. There was that much noise going on at that game. It was an incredible finish to the prelim, and the irony in the Masters of the close finishes not getting there by a point, not lost on anyone. Let's go to the buck stops here.
Yes, and we're going to run this the same way we ran it last week, Gaz, and that is that we'll go game by game. And obviously the first one was Geelong's 71-point victory over Brisbane. They were dominant through the first half, but they were only 5 goals up, but a 7-goal-to-2 third term put the gap in the game that we all saw and felt. They were all conquering and all powerful on the evening, Friday night.
I thought that was really interesting from Chris Fagan, and whilst I was sitting there disappointed for he and the Lions and everyone else thinking, gee, they're a bit of a way off, it was a good point. You just got to, and Chris Scott spoke to it as well, you just got to put yourself in the frame. And if you're a Geelong supporter out there that has been critical of Chris over the journey and their inability to win a premiership, I wonder whether you just concede now, okay, we're just got to keep putting ourselves in the frame and having a go. Now, they haven't won one yet since his first one, but they're there again, which is incredible.
It probably goes to your point about what happens when you fall short. How do we view those teams that, so in any estimation, Geelong's capacity to be in 8 of the last 12 preliminary finals is exceptional. And a couple of their flags in 07 and 09 are prior to that record of Chris Scott's, 8 in 12 years, which is a phenomenal record. And for them to be able to, and they've had to work hard to earn these opportunities, but there has been a shift in 12 months, as Brisbane could have a shift in 12 months. But to the game, Paddy Dangerfield was one of the key stories out of the night, and the way that he's been managed throughout the back half of the season. He's probably as lightly raced as he's ever been throughout a home and away season. In the first centre bounce, he runs forward, takes a mark going back with a flight, kicks a goal from outside 50. He's into the game. Geelong are into the game. He's done that consistently. Only played 63% of the first half to have 16 touches and maximum impact. And then it looked like he was as hungry to play the game of footy and to contribute. You couldn't get him off the field in the second half. He played nearly 90% of the game, which wouldn't be strategically what they were looking to do, but he just was like a kid in a candy shop and looked up and about.
Remember we interviewed him the week before when he started on the bench? You were with us, I think. And he looked at us and we said, how'd you go, you and Joel, start on the bench? And he had this look on his face, like he's sucking lemons. And he said, yeah, well, I might have to have a chat with Grigor about that. He got his way, started on the ground, kicked the first goal.
Joel Selwood's still on the pine.
Joel was on the pine, yeah.
But no,
there's my question for you. Tom Stewart, pre-game we talked about this, most important, who's going to intercept marking, if they free. Within 2 minutes he's freed up doing what Tom Stewart does as well as anyone in the competition. And it became a stumbling block. If it wasn't him, it was Henry or Kolajasny or someone. Just explain to the listeners how they were orchestrating that. This is the Geelong Footy Club with Blitzarves and Stanley.
Yep.
And why Brisbane didn't react to it.
So this is common. This is not something new.
No, Tom Stewart said this has been going on for a while. So this is further to my point.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have caught Brisbane by surprise.
This is the way Geelong play. This is the way Richmond played through their years. When you can picture Dylan Grimes standing out the back in the back half, owning the back half of the field on his own, pretty much. So Richmond will call it the nude. Collingwood at times have called it the wolf. I don't know what the Cats call their guy, but he's basically
champion.
Well, it's
That's
Tommy
what I
Stewart.
call him.
Well, it's a position. See, Tom Stewart didn't need to get the ball, and we'll talk about how they get it. But Tom Stewart didn't need to get the ball to be influential. Yeah. Often he would move to the most damaging scoring position for Brisbane as a one out or create a 2v1 in that part of the field, and then force the ball carriers to actually shift.
They kicked it out of bounds on the full a couple of times because they're trying to go around him. So my question is why?
And Brisbane were trying and do it as well. You Constantine back. So Blitzav started as a midfielder. He would ruck any ruck contest in the front half for Geelong.
Yep.
So they would go a midfielder down at that contest, or they bring forward up in to balance it. But they go a midfielder down, Blitzarves would ruck. Reece Stanley as a ruckman would go and pick up either Danaher or Hipwood.
Yes.
And then they'd Constantina and Stewart would end up as the loose.
So that's how it happened, right? Everyone is understanding of that. Why did Brisbane let it happen?
So Brisbane, most sides will decide not to equalise in that part of their field because they still need to you still need to defend. So you often want your numbers in around the ball or behind the ball so you can prevent the opposition from scoring. You're actually thinking to defend as much as you think, okay, when we win the ball and we go forward, we'll give them their extra number there, which 80 metres from the ball, but we've still got to win this contest and prevent the oppo from scoring.
So you got 3 goals at half-time. You go in at half-time, you go, okay, we knew this was going to happen. We allowed it to happen. Maybe our ball use has gone and played into their hands.
Can we square this
3
up?
3 goals at half-time. You got to score to win the prelim to go into a grand final. Why don't you change it?
And they tried to.
So you reckon they tried?
They definitely tried to. But what you're pretty much asking to do is that all your forwards have got to run away and lengthen, which is fair enough. You generally do that in general play. What Geelong have added to their game that they're doing exceptionally well is pressure on the ball, which makes that loose player out the back even more damaging, because if you can use your extra number running with the ball through the midfield, which Collingwood did it in the qualifying final at times, which the best offensive sides will do to challenge that loose player at the back, then you can be damaging. But when you've got blokes like Close and Myers and Stengel and the midfielders that are putting greater pressure in around that extra player in the midfield, Brisbane just could not get any time and space to find any damaging options in their front half.
They couldn't. So we had
So it was a balance of both.
The stat going in that the Cats are the number 1 scoring team from turn. So let's just strip this back because it hasn't happened too often in the last 10 years of footy. So when the ball gets turned over, which all the analysts will tell you is such a critical part of the game, Geelong score on turnover more than any other team. So how they turn that footy over and convert the scores is better than anyone else. And if they turn the footy over, then they defend better than anyone else.
Yes.
They're number 1 on both sides of the ball. It's happened once in 10 years. The team that did it was Richmond, who won a grand final by 89 points. There's some good pointers in that.
And do you know who the second would just... I mean, Geelong have been sensational in balancing offence and defence, and their consistency of shape and their efficiency and role is huge. Who's the number 2 team in offence transition efficiency?
Who was it?
It's Sydney. So the best
this year,
the best 2 teams, the best 2 teams at scoring from turnover and defending turnover are in the grand final, and it's no surprise to see that. Richmond were actually third in that.
At one stage on Friday night, we were going for a world record, and we were getting a bit excited about it. So Brisbane was staring down the barrel of getting to 3/4 time without having scored a single point from turnover.
And you boys were very kind at the time, because the last time that's happened, the only time that's happened in a final, was the 2020 semi-final when we played Geelong up at the Gabba.
I didn't bring that up.
And we hadn't scored from turnover until after 3/4 time. So Jared Berry took a mark with about 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. So that stat was thankfully not important. But you talk about intercept defenders and setting up with that loose. That doesn't automatically mean that Tom Stewart is going to get heaps of the ball because he's playing on his own. But it brings that team defence to light. Yep. Kolodajny and Henry were the ones that took the most intercept marks, and Kolodajny's been maligned at times, but he had an exceptional game.
Great game.
McStay, uncompetitive at times aerially. Hipwood and Danaher, and even McInerney trying to get forward. 4 guys who are charged with owning the air, and this is a consistency with Saturday night as well. You need to own the air to get your ground game going.
Yep.
Because if you don't own the air, then the players at ground level don't have the confidence of where to get front and centre, or can't speed up off that contest, or don't run hard to that contest knowing that they're going to get it, the ball's going to come to ground. Kolodajny kept marking the ball. Henry kept marking the ball. Stewart and De Koning, who have been the best intercept defenders for Geelong through the comp, they didn't have to do as much work, but they shared the load. And Brisbane's offense was absolutely disarmed because their talls wouldn't compete and couldn't compete.
So the Cats, and we'll talk about them all week, so we won't overly analyse, but I can't get out of my mind the three smalls on Friday night. Myers, Close and Stengel. And they're going to be a nightmare matchup for the Swans come Saturday. But that's okay. They'll deal with that, and they've dealt with it, most of it throughout the year. But, gee, they've got better and better. They got better through the second half of that big final against Collingwood. In fact, by the end, I think they were as important as any. But, golly, have they turned into a weapon, those three boys.
No doubt. And Myers' game was exceptional. Kicked a couple himself. A few of his goal assists and score assists were exceptional. I thought Close has been as consistent a small forward in that type of role this year as anyone. You know, Stengel's hit the scoreboard more, and we found himself sort of closer to the front third. But Close just gets up and back. He had 22 touches himself. Myers 22 touches.
Running capacity.
A lot of them, and more handballs and kicks. So if you picture them doing what they're doing, they're buzzing, they're pressuring really well, they're making smart decisions in outnumbered situations often, and then going from inside out, and then they're feeding it to the Holmes and the Smiths and these guys that are running on the outside, or they're running defenders, and they've been very important. And the three of them together, and then obviously there's more than just that, but that explains why you got a guy like Parfitt who started as a forward, but then as an inside mid, gets mid-20s possessions consistently, but it has been overtaken by the importance of role players in this Geelong side and what they're doing as a team.
I defer often to, so if your own team, if you'll follow Collingwood closer than I will. Jonathan Brown, obviously, and his great concern about Brisbane, throughout the year is their incapacity to be able to run like those three blokes, and that is their forwards. So their forwards, McCarthy, Charlie Cameron, Archie.
Robertson played there at times.
Yeah, so they all can hit the scoreboard, but they don't cover the ground and get up and back like those three. So it's something that they will have to look at and think about, because it's a game where your forwards have got to be able to, cover your 12 to 15 kilometres. So
Zorko's another one that's been playing in that high forward role, and he's, what is he cut his teeth there, but then he became a ball getting midfielder. He was used off half back at times, but they weren't as efficient. We talk about Geelong's capacity in the turnover game, both offensively and defensively. They're very efficient. Brisbane weren't as efficient, and therefore the individuals don't pop. You don't look like you can have as much influence because they weren't playing as well as a team.
And then you sit there, if you're a Brisbane supporter, you go, how come we can't transition, move this footy? How come we can't? This is on the night because they have been able to move it. And that's all the reasons, This how well defensively Geelong set up, but also the incapacity to get up and run, and then you can go around Tom Stewart if you've got some running support. So they get the young boy Ashcroft, who could have a Nick Dacos like. I know that's a very easy refrain. But
they won their grand final on Friday night. He had 39 and won the best on in their grand final. So
he's almost universal across the board, pick number one. So that's going to be a great addition. And he would probably play straight away, which might be the end of Jared Lyons. Maybe, who knows? And then Dunkley is the other one who there's been talked about. I don't know. Again, this is not my area. Sammy Edmund will join us, who may go up. Now, is that going to be sufficient, do you think, to push them past where they're at?
Well, it's going to be.
McStay goes
improvement. Well, we're assuming, aren't we? Yeah. There's a lot of assumptions have been made, but that's why trade period and draft will be very interesting. But I mean, 3 weeks ago, Brisbane and Chris Fagan were being criticised around. You're just too predictable. You're going to get knocked over by Richmond, and maybe their last two performances are done on G&D. It's just guts and determination. They steeled themselves. They got a narrow win against Richmond, and then their performance against Melbourne was really strong. And off the back of Jared Berry's performance on Oliver and really being able to take it to them in the second half last week, but the question marks are still there. They're uncompetitive at times in front of the ball, and you need to find a way to. Whether you're a small forward or a tall forward, you're going to be in outnumbered contests. And the players that have the most impact as forwards are the ones that can delay the ball when it's a 1v2, that can win a contest when it's a 2v3, that can kick a goal when it's a 3v4. So it's not
lay a tackle.
Well, yeah, you're not going to find yourself in even numbered contests all the time. So do they have the players with that capacity? Can they develop them? That's going to be the question.
The Holmes debate will go on and on and on, and I take Chris Scott. He spoke so glowingly about his medical team, so who are we to second guess? It looked like, for all intents and purposes, he'd done his hammy and was going to miss the 3 weeks, the mandatory 3 weeks, and again, we are just guessing, so I'll put that out there, but it would surprise me if he comes up. But again, I'm saying this from 80 kilometres away with no knowledge at all. Just looked like if it was round 13, it'd be 3 weeks.
Well, if there's nothing there, and there's and as he as a young fella tried to say when he was heading into the GMHBA yesterday morning, like, no, the scans are clear. I'm good. It's like everything's tracking well. I'll prove my fitness and I'll play.
That'd be great.
And I understand that's going to be the default. That's where you put the flag in the ground and you try and end the speculation. The reality is that he had an incident, whatever that was, whether it was neural or muscular, in the middle of on the wing and on an inside-out kick. Now, if that happens 10 minutes into the first quarter in a grand final, you can't abide by that.
That's right. So that's the issue, isn't it? And again, I'm not that interested in this. Well, I hope he plays, obviously, because the kid's been the number one rated wing over the last 2 months and was the number one rated player on the ground when he came off, and all we're doing is guessing. But in the end, you sit back and you go, gee whiz, he's going to be lost if he's not there, and there'll be no sentiment in it. I mean, Chris Scott and the rest of the Geelong team will just go either yes or no, and you're out.
Well, Hoyne from Champion Data that feeds us for our broadcast at Fox, he's said that he's been big on Max Holmes, the number one rated wingman in the last 2 months of the competition, and he's been someone who has played increasingly more midfield minutes as well, but has been so crucial for them to get up and back. And in transition, you talk about the runners and the guys that they've changed.
Yeah,
bring in Isaac Smith, who had minimal impact, but he's still going to be up and back all night. Max Holmes, who has been sensational. So those small forwards that we spoke about, they've added to their running profile, which feeds into their really strong defensive capacities. But the running profile has enabled them to springboard off the back half.
It's a great story about Holmes, the way they got him. It's one of my favourites. We got alerted to it by Hoyne, who just said at the draft, whenever the draft was 2 years ago, whenever they took him, they said, we need a runner. Identified him, and on the night traded up with Richmond to pick him as their number one pick when not many people had heard of him. And look at him now. He's the number one rated, as you say, in the last 8 weeks, up and back.
Well, I have some a knowledge of the family, a great family, and his younger brother has played footy with my son, so know the family well. The mum is an athlete, comes from good stock, so you can see where the running capacity has come from, but just made of the right stuff, great family values, and you can see it in the way that he's come through as a competitor.
Let me just ask you the emotional. I want to ask you the emotional, then we'll get into the analytical. What was the feeling like on Saturday? You're in at Fox, were you?
Yeah.
Getting ready for your show. So
yes.
How was all that going?
For me, there wasn't a lot of prep for the show going. I was trying to get some quiet space and quiet time, and I was investing in the game and taking it all on board.
So you're confident going in?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I thought it was going to take something exceptional to stop. I was disappointed with the first half. Just Swans' capacity to score. They went inside 30 times for 18 scores in the first half, and really set the game up at that in that part of the contest.
Yeah. So we'll unpack that after we take our break here. But I just was. I mean, you can. as we said, we talk about all the time. You try and take your emotion out of it, but you weren't commentating the game, so you could just be a Collingwood supporter watching it.
At halftime, I was with Howie and took a segment. I had a couple of people call me after the game and said, it was pretty hard for you, wasn't it? I said, yeah, like I was invested in it, but the feedback I got was that they reckon Fox wanted me to be like a Collingwood supporter. They wanted me to be, they wanted to know what it felt like. Yeah, play the role. But I was trying to stay impartial. And I think, you would understand that. And guys like Kingy, we've got guys that have moved on to the media from their experiences as a player and a coach. And I've had, best part of 30 years at Collingwood. So it's actually really difficult to do that. You understand you need to stay impartial, and you are talking about a game of football. But I couldn't remove myself from that, and I found that very hard to do in September. It was a little bit easier through home and away, but when you get to the pointy end, the players that I've had a lot to do with have now lost a grand final by less than a goal, and have had the ball in the goal square in two prelims in the last 4 years. And not being able to get over the line. So I feel for them.
This is from Hugh. Following message, Collingwood have the worst forward line for top four we've ever seen. 104% home and away. 104% teams don't win flags or play off in grand finals.
They're very close to.
They're pretty damn close, Hugh.
I get his point around the forward line. But my check's underrated. Ginnivan just kept hitting the scoreboard. Johnson is a young player who's had an impact and had a quiet game. Elliott's an elite player. McCreary's a good pressure player.
Ginnivan's come on.
Yeah, and Hoskin Elliott sort of probably gets on the end of play and can float in and out of games. But I see the point. But let's go to the game. And obviously Sydney were able to show us their bona fides. They had won 8 in a row at that point. This was their 9th. They set the game up in the first half by being able to score at will going forward, defended really well, and against the Collingwood side that were always going to take it up to them, they were sensational throughout the whole 4 quarters.
The Swans are through. The Collingwood as Craig McRae says, they're 1 of 18 when the season starts next year, and that's the harshness of this time of year.
You got to love his pragmatism, but also the emotion that he's able to draw out of himself and the group. But it was a fantastic final. It was riveting drama, and there's nothing more compelling than watching a contest like that come to its its genesis. And Collingwood went about it the way they had all year, and were never going to give in. But Sydney, right up front, were brilliant. They started the game really well. As we said coming in, they scored 18 times out of their first 30 inside 50s at halftime. There was 30 insides all. It's not as if Collingwood didn't have its opportunities going inside 50, but Sydney won their contests in front of the ball, and they won the contest behind the ball, and that's where they got the gap in the game.
So that goes to the first bit and biggest question in the game. And we weren't there, right? So It's different when you're at the ground, so you can definitively say, I'm going on what Kingy was telling us on the Fox coverage, on what Sando was telling us on the AFL Nation coverage. No Darcy Moore to Buddy Franklin. It was Maynard, according to the boys, who was the option, and it was a mistake. One of the few that Craig McRae's made this year.
Yeah, well, from my same thing, you're not at the ground, but I saw Howe and Maynard going to him at times in the first half. There's definitely no intent to get Darcy Moore onto him. And we always say, okay, so it should have been Darcy because Darcy goes on to Franklin in the second half and the game turns. Darcy plays better. Franklin's quelled.
Part of that, can I just jump in?
Yeah.
With the other, which I think is one of the most significant things, Reid gets injured and goes off.
Yeah.
Reid's first quarter on a bit was just extraordinary.
It was.
So he is the aerial presence. Buddy's not the aerial presence. We know that. The fact that he took that contest at Mark Lake was superb, and Hickey as well. But in a grand final, you need aerial presence forward of the ball, and that's Reid.
Absolutely.
So if he's not there, it's going to be a huge out for the Swans.
And he is, because what was happening, Hickey was getting forward of the ball as well. So what we saw, and this is where Hickey's role cannot be understated, because he's getting,
Superb.
A ruckman is more than just a clearance player now, and he has to. Like, he always has been. But the value in the ruck role for me is the around ground aerial presence. You need to be able to present that, and to be able to do that. Often you're either behind the ball because you sit and prop behind and you support your defence, or you're asked to get forward and get in front of the ball. Very rarely have you got the running capacity to do both. Tom Hickey has become one of those rare ruckmen that actually can cover the ground to get to the positions on the field. Not so he's a possession getter and link-up play, but he covers the ground so that he can be an aerial player behind to support his defence. And when he goes forward, you either draw your direct opponent, your ruckman, to you, or you draw a key defender who sees that you're in the better position and leaves his player to go to you. In the end, Swans were able to do that so effectively, it disarmed Collingwood's intercept game. So neither Darcy Moore nor Jeremy Howe were able to have any impact in the air, which we've often expected them to do.
Yep.
And I think that's why Maynard was favoured with Franklin, was to allow Moore and Howe to take intercept marks. But because Reid and Hickey were so good at bringing the ball to ground, that tactic didn't work.
Yeah, but so then you go back to the job that Moore did on Hawkins in the first week of finals.
But I reckon, Darcy Moore can still be an intercept defender off a Tom Hawkins.
But this is my point.
It's really hard to do it off of Franklin.
No, well, respectfully, not for the first time.
Because you let Franklin go and you stay back.
Either that, right? Because of the role that Buddy plays and his willingness to get up and go on that ground, you could just say, "Okay, I'll let you go," and you'll just go into traffic. Or footy's coming through Buddy. You know that Buddy, particularly on the back of a no-goal game, and everyone's saying, you watch Buddy bounce back. Well, you know they're going to go through Buddy. Play your best player on Buddy and give him the chance to be the interceptor. At 1.5, and they're down. Then I know things change, but the scores from back half and his ability to intercept once he went to him and was involved in the contest. I know it can be self-fulfilling for your argument.
I understand that, but I'll remind you of what you were saying about Buddy a couple of weeks ago. That he needed to change his game up, and Stephen May had actually taken him a task. So that goes to that you can play your best intercept defender on Franklin, and he still has an impact.
Yeah, that's the point, though.
So
Stephen May did it.
But and the tactics of Stephen May were, if Franklin ran up the field, I'll let him go, and I'll just play in the back half.
So isn't that more compelling reason to have Darcy Moore play that role?
It is. You look at that and you say, yes, he could have done that. But then you go, okay, so you put Maynard to Sam Reid, or you put Howe to Sam Reid, and then you go, okay, so or Murphy, what we've understood of Collingwood is that they have been able to shuffle the magnets, and play undersized as a back six or seven for the majority of the year, and they've largely been able to do that because of their pressure on the ball, forcing dump kicks. But Sydney were actually able to get from the inside to the outside against Collingwood in the first half. They won clearance, they won contested ball, and they were able to find time and space going inside forward 50, which unpacked Collingwood's intercept game.
Yep. Buddy Franklin, he played the role of a bulldozer when he spent his career as a Lamborghini. That's what came to my mind. I said, here's a bloke who's just said, nah, let me crash packs. The amount of times he threw his body into a pack just to get a spillage was... For all the love I've had and everyone's had for Buddy and what he's been capable of doing, his willingness to take on that role, I thought just if you could possibly have even greater respect than I did on the weekend on the back of that.
I can't remember the exact game, but it was mid-year when Lance Franklin went and stuck 2 tackles early in the game, and his intent to do the team thing. To do to set the agenda for his teammates.
Yep,
mate, you're really happy with that last call of yours, are you?
No, I'm talking to the back room.
You're happy with your Lamborghini and your bulldozer one. That'll get some traction.
Oh no, that'll be taken out of context.
But it will be, of course. But I thought, what you say about Buddy is spot on, and what it does is it speaks to a team that believes that it's on the right journey and on the right path. And when one of your star players understands that he's got this talent around him that are going to rise, and then he sees himself as the person who therefore needs to tip into this area and that area that would not commonly be where he goes to, I think that becomes so powerful for the rest of the group. And what you're saying is true. He's prepared to get his hands dirty.
It's great. I love
it. Right at the end of his career, get his hands dirty and set it up for the rest of his teammates.
I've got one more for you, which you won't like, but I'm going to.
Okay.
And I've been consistent on this all year. And again, don't take this the wrong way if you're a Nick Dacos fan, because I am as well. I love what he's done this year, and I'm all the plaudits he deserves. Coaches have been negligent in their duty on Nick Dacos through the course of this year. They have allowed him, as a first-year player, to play on his terms for the majority of the year and dominate games.
Yep.
They allowed him to do that. And every week, the longer the year went, the question justifiably would be asked is, why don't you put work into this kid? He's a first-year player. We are being so kind to him. Put the work into him as if he was Luke Hodge or someone. And, Clark goes to him. In
round 22, they did that also.
And he goes to him again, and by half-time, he'd had no influence.
Yep.
None. And I looked at it and went, what have we been doing all year with this kid? We've been so good to him, which is great.
I've got... And this is where...
I've got only a minute. Do you want
I understand. No, I do want to say this quickly. So we say, okay, so Maynard's exposed on Franklin because we don't get the aerial intercepts, and that actually feeds into Nick Dacos's capacity to play the game on his terms. So Clark's job was exceptional, but it was also made easier by the job of the job that Reid and Hickey did in the end.
No, I take that on board.
The attitude of Frank. So there's always more than just the obvious reasons for things. But yes, that tactic was significant. And I know that Geelong saw that Nick Dacos was the start, the middle and the end of a lot of Collingwood's attacking flair. And when you, just for an instance, if you watch any time that Pendlebury and Nick Dacos found themselves in the same passage of play, it's all over.
That's
because they're such good decision makers with such scope in how they can use the ball and move the ball, that when they get the ball in any space at all, that it's basically a scoring opportunity for Collingwood.